Now that our player can move from left to right, we need to find a way to set a boundary on both axes to confine the player within the bounding box. So introducing if-then statement will help provide solution to this particular problem. So we're going to open our script, and then right inside the void update, I'm going to press enter. We're going to write if, and then open the curly braces. So here we're going to define transform.translate as long as it's greater than 14. So inside this box, so this is more or less conditional. So as long as this condition is met, so meaning as long as this is true, then always run this, okay? But the moment this is false, the code will also stop. Now we're going to write in transform.position, okay, and then I'm going to define a vector 3. So inside vector 3, I'm going to write 14 on the x-axis. So transform.position.y and transform.position.z. Okay, so remember vector 3 takes in 3 parameters, x, y, and z. So that will do. So the reason why we're having an error here, this is position, not translate. Okay, and then we're going to type .x. Okay, so we're actually focusing on a particular axis, which is the x-axis, because the movement is from left to right. So we have nothing to do with y or z axis, so we'll just focus on this. So, but the problem, if we leave this out, we're going to have an error because it's looking for a particular axis, okay? Because this is just a single value, this is not a vector. Now we're going to give it that particular single value. As long as the x is less than 14, so the code will always run, okay? So it means the player will keep moving on the x-axis, okay? So now let's save, and then let's head back to Unity, okay? So now I'm going to hit play. So I'm going to move our player. You can see that it cannot go beyond this. So you can actually see, let me select the player. So you can see the movement. It can't go beyond that particular position, okay? But then it can continue moving on the negative axis, okay? So this time around, we're going to repeat the same thing on the negative axis. We're going to go back, and then we're going to write else if. Good. So here we're going to write in the same thing, transform.position.x greater less than -14. Okay, so we're going to define, let's make our code look a lot better. So I'm going to go over to edit, go to advanced, and then I'm going to format document. So this is good. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to type in transform.position because it's a new vector 3, so -14. So virtually we're doing the same thing like we did on the positive axis. Okay, so there you go. Now we are done. So now if this holds true, the code is going to run forever, meaning the player can continue to move on the positive axis without setting any bounding box. Okay, so this is more or less a bounding box that we're setting. So as long as the player reach this particular threshold, the position is going to reset from this particular threshold, is going to be fixed, and then the y and the z axis will always remain the way it is, but our emphasis is on the x axis. So assuming, okay, let's run it and see what happens first. So I'm going to run this code. So I'm going to come back here to still explain further. So let's go to Unity, and then I'm going to hit play. Okay, so you can see the bounding box. So here as well, so the player is not going beyond the negative x and y-axis, so you can actually see different positions. Let me select the player so you can see. Let me select the player, and you can see the position is not going beyond the positive x-axis. So let's see the negative as well. So you can see it's fixed at -14. So let's stop the code, and then I'm going to go back to the script so we could explain a few things before we wrap up. Okay, so like I said, as long as this holds true, the player will continue to move without anybody stopping it, but we're actually setting a bounding box, and this is the value we want to use, 14. And the reason is, you can see the way we arranged the dogs that will be feeding later in the game. So once it gets here, so meaning this is the last dog, so once it gets here, it can still feed the dog. But as long as if you set the bounding box around here, meaning it cannot go past this position to feed this dog. So that's why we set the position at here, so you can move and feed the last dog. So that was the reason why we set the x-axis to be 14. Okay, now the transform dot position, you all know this already. So this is x, y, and z axis. So whatever that you have here is going to be saved within here. So meaning this value, as soon as the player gets to 14, is going to ensure is using this particular value to set the new position. So to have a clearer picture, I'm going to set this to 0. So you're going to see why. So I've set this to 0. So the moment the player gets to 14, the new value is going to be reset back to 0 around here. So let's see. So you can see I'm moving. So the moment I get to 14, you can see it's going to be reset back. You can see that that's reset back to 0. Okay, so that is just the simple logic. But then the reason why we set it at 14, so that once the player reached the bounding box, it's going to stop right at where the bounding box is instead of coming back to 0. So that was the reason why we set it at 14. So I'm going to come back here, and then let's set it back to 14. Now, instead of using a hard-coded value like we learned in previous unit, so we're going to use a defined variable. So since we know the value, so let's use private instead of public. Since it's an int, let's declare an int rather than float, because these are all integers, not float. So private int x range, so we're going to say is equals to 14. So I'm going to come here and then type x range, come here as well and replace it with x range, and then here. So remember, there's a negative sign here, so ensure you maintain the negative sign, and here as well there's a negative sign, ensure you maintain the negative sign. So that is all we have to do, and then I'm going to hit save. So go back to Unity, everything still runs like before. You can see. All right, so we're able to set our bounding box successfully. So if then statement works perfectly for us. Okay, so that is all I have for you in this video. So I'll see you guys in the next video.